If you had asked me a few years ago how I was doing, I would have told you without hesitation that I was a lucky man. Life wasn't extravagant, but it was good. I had a steady job, a roof over my head, and, most importantly, a wife I loved with all my heart. I worked 2 jobs not out of necessity, but because I wanted to. I believed in hard work, saving up, and building a secure future for the 2 of us. It was exhausting, sure, but I never minded. I was doing it for us, for the life I thought we were creating together. We lived in a modest but cozy home. Nothing flashy, nothing that would catch anyone's eye, but it was enough. I genuinely believed I had everything a man could want, a wife who looked at me like I was her entire world, someone who waited for me after those long, grueling shifts, sending sweet messages throughout the day, reminding me to take care of myself, telling me she missed me, telling me she loved me. And I believed her. I trusted her completely. You see, when you love someone, you don't question them. You don't spend your days doubting their words or analyzing their actions. You just believe. And that's exactly what I did. I took every word, every smile, and every "I love you" at face value. But love has a way of blinding you. It can make you see only what you want to see. And I was no different. I thought I had a perfect marriage. I thought I had a faithful wife. But the truth? The truth was something else entirely. And one day, I would wake up to a reality I never saw coming. It started like any other evening. I had just dragged myself home from another long shift, my body aching and my mind running on fumes. The sun was dipping below the horizon, casting that soft, golden glow across the neighborhood. All I could think about was a hot shower, a quick meal, and maybe a few precious hours of sleep before I had to do it all over again. That's when I heard my neighbor call out to me. Now, I'll be honest, I wasn't particularly close with any of my neighbors. Sure, I'd give a nod or a quick "how's it going" if we passed each other, but that was about it. No long chats, no backyard barbecues, just the kind of polite, distant acknowledgement you give to people who happen to live nearby. But this was different. He was an older man, probably in his late 50s. The type who always sat out on his porch watching the world go by like it was his favorite TV show. And that evening, as the sky turned shades of orange and purple, he motioned for me to come over. I didn't know what to expect as I walked over to him, wiping the sweat off my forehead with the back of my hand. Something about the way he looked made me uneasy. His eyes kept darting around, scanning the street like he was making sure no one else could hear what he was about to say. "Hey, look. I don't mean to stir up any trouble," he began, shifting in his seat like he was uncomfortable even bringing it up. His voice was low, almost hesitant, like he was weighing whether he should even say it. "Maybe it's none of my business, but I've noticed something. Your wife," he paused, his gaze meeting mine for a split second before dropping again. "She's been bringing a man home while you're at work." I blinked, trying to process his words. And then I laughed. Not because I thought it was funny, but because it was so absurd that it felt like a bad joke. "A man?" I repeated the words, shaking my head, trying to brush it off. "Nah. If she had someone over, it's probably just a relative. Maybe her cousin or something," I said, forcing a grin. But he didn't laugh. He didn't even crack a smile. He just looked at me with this expression I couldn't quite place, something between pity and regret. "I don't think so," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've seen him. A few times now. Same guy. And it's always when you're not around." The air felt heavier all of a sudden, like someone had sucked the oxygen right out of it. I stood there, rooted to the spot, my mind spinning. For a brief moment, his words wormed their way into my brain, planting a seed of doubt. Almost. But no, I couldn't let that happen. This was ridiculous. My wife, the same woman who sent me sweet messages during the day, reminding me to eat and asking how my shift was going. The woman who kissed me softly every morning before I left for work, her lips lingering like she didn't want me to go. She wouldn't do something like that. She couldn't. I forced a chuckle, waving a hand dismissively. "I appreciate the concern, really, but you must be mistaken," I said, trying to put an end to the conversation. He hesitated like he had more to say, but after a moment he just gave me a slow nod. "All right," he murmured. "Maybe I am." I walked away, shaking my head, trying to brush off the whole encounter. But that night, as I lay in bed, his words echoed in my mind like a haunting refrain. No matter how hard I tried to silence them, they wouldn't go away. I kept telling myself there had to be a reasonable explanation. Maybe it was a cousin. Or a friend from work. Someone harmless. Someone I didn't need to worry about. But no matter how many excuses I came up with, the thought wouldn't leave me. It lingered, gnawing at the edges of my sanity. I had to know. Not because I suspected her, not really. I just needed proof. Proof that my neighbor was wrong. Proof that my wife was exactly who I thought she was. The next day, while she was out running errands, I took matters into my own hands. I bought a few tiny cameras, nothing fancy, just small devices with memory cards to store the footage. I didn't go overboard, didn't put them everywhere. Just a few spots. Places where I knew she wouldn't notice. I told myself it was just to ease my mind, to put the doubts to rest once and for all. But deep down, I think a part of me already knew. And that terrified me. I adjusted the last camera, my hands trembling slightly as I secured it in place. I hated that it had come to this, that I even had to entertain the thought. But at the same time it felt necessary. If she wasn't doing anything wrong, then no harm would come from it. And if she was, well, I needed to know. One way or another. So I waited. Days passed. I did my best to push it all to the back of my mind, telling myself that I was being paranoid, that I'd let a stranger's words poison my thoughts. I almost convinced myself that the cameras were a waste of time, that I'd check the footage and find nothing but my wife going about her day, just like always. When I finally sat down in front of my laptop, my heart was pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. I clicked open the files, my fingers hesitating over the touchpad for a moment before I pressed play. The first few days were normal. Just her moving around the house, watching TV, cooking dinner. Nothing out of the ordinary. Nothing to raise even the slightest suspicion. I felt the tension slowly leave my body, replaced by a wave of relief that almost made me laugh. I should have deleted everything right then and there, wiped it all away and pretended this never happened. But I didn't. Something made me keep watching. And that's when I saw it. My wife. Standing in our living room. Smiling. Pouring 2 glasses of wine. And then he walked in. A man I'd never seen before. He wasn't a relative. He wasn't a friend. He was a stranger. But the way she greeted him, the ease in her smile, the warmth in her eyes, they were too comfortable. Too familiar. I kept watching, my throat tightening, my breathing growing shallow. They moved to the couch, sitting far too close for anything innocent. And then he leaned in. Kissed her. I felt my chest tighten, the air leaving my lungs as I watched him slip an arm around her waist, pulling her closer. My fingers dug into the sides of my laptop, but I couldn't tear my eyes away. I needed to see. They stood up after a while, hand in hand, and headed upstairs. To our bedroom. My breath caught, my throat went dry, but I didn't look away. I watched as they disappeared behind the door I had shared with her for years. That door. The one that had witnessed our life together, our quiet moments, our laughter, and now this. The hallway was empty. The door was closed. But I didn't need to see any more. I knew exactly what was happening on the other side. The weight of that knowledge hit me like a punch straight to the gut. Time passed, I'm not sure how long before I saw him emerge again. But this time he was wearing my bathrobe. The one I wore every morning after my shower. That's when I had to stop. I paused the video and squeezed my eyes shut, trying to steady my breathing. My chest felt like it was caving in, and for a moment I wasn't sure if I'd be able to pull in another breath. I sat there for a long time feeling empty. Like something inside me had been hollowed out. I could have confronted her. I could have marched into the house that very night and demanded answers. Why? Why had she done this? Why had she lied to me? Why had she brought another man into her home, into her bed? But I didn't. Because I knew exactly how it would play out. She'd lie. She'd twist the truth. Cry. Beg. Say all the right things. She'd tell me it was a mistake, that it didn't mean anything, that she still loved me. And maybe she'd even try to make me feel guilty. Say I had been too busy with work, that I hadn't paid her enough attention. No. I wouldn't give her that satisfaction. I wouldn't give her a chance to manipulate the situation, to rewrite the story and make herself the victim. Instead, I made a decision. No arguments. No shouting. No confrontation. I wasn't going to give her a single clue that I knew. I was going to leave. And I was going to do it right. This wasn't just about walking away, I had to erase myself completely. No loose ends. No way for her to track me down. The first step was money. I'd always been the one handling our finances, so it was easy to move things around without raising suspicion. I started saving every extra penny I could from my 2 jobs. I cut back on anything unnecessary, no takeout, no splurges. Every bit of extra cash went into a stash she didn't know about. She never noticed. She was too distracted. Too caught up in her new life. Next, I opened a private account with one of those global payment platforms. I knew that if I couldn't just drain our joint account all at once, that would have set off alarms and had her asking questions I wasn't ready to answer. So I played it smart. I started small, a few hundred here, a few hundred there. Just gradual transfers, little amounts that wouldn't raise any red flags. Bit by bit, I moved my share of our savings into the new account, ensuring that when I left, I wouldn't be walking away with nothing. The credit cards came next. We had a few shared ones, and I knew I had to sever that link before I disappeared. I told her I was switching banks, that I wanted to consolidate everything to make managing our finances easier. She barely listened, nodding absently while scrolling through her phone. As long as she had access to what she needed, she didn't care about the details. One by one, I shut those accounts down. I made sure that by the time I was gone, there wouldn't be a single financial trail she could follow. No way for her to trace my movements or figure out where I'd gone. Quitting my jobs was the final piece of the puzzle. I didn't make a fuss. I put in my resignation quietly, made sure to leave on good terms so that no one had a reason to come looking for me later. I told my boss I was moving on to something better, an exciting new opportunity in another city. He shook my hand, wished me the best, and told me to keep in touch. None of them had any idea that once I walked out of that office, I'd be gone for good. And through it all, my wife remained completely oblivious. She was still seeing him, still bringing him into her home, still using our bed for something it was never meant for. I watched the days tick by, feeling more and more like a stranger in my own life. I was just a ghost, going through the motions, counting down the hours until I could finally walk away. The night before I left, I sat in the living room for the last time. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I looked around, taking it all in one last time. The photos on the wall, the furniture we had picked out together, the little pieces of a life I had poured my heart into building. But none of it felt like mine anymore. This wasn't my home. It was a place where I had been made a fool. My eyes drifted down to my hand, to the simple gold band on my finger. That ring had once meant everything: love, commitment, a promise that we'd face whatever came our way together. But now it was just a reminder of a lie. I slid it off, rolling it between my fingers, feeling its weight one last time. It felt heavier than it should have. Like it was carrying all the pain, the betrayal, the broken promises. I didn't need it where I was going. I left it on the coffee table, a quiet goodbye to the life I was leaving behind. At 4:30 a.m. I stood by the front door with my bag slung over my shoulder. No hesitation. No second thoughts. Just a quiet resolve. I turned the handle, feeling the cool metal in my palm as I opened the door. I stepped outside, and as the door clicked shut behind me, I didn't look back. Not once. By the time the sun crept over the horizon, I was already gone. I didn't know it then, but I found out later how it all unraveled for her. How one morning she woke up to find the bed beside her empty. At first, I imagined she didn't think much of it. Maybe she assumed I was already up, moving around the house, getting ready for work, or maybe in the shower. But as she wandered through the house, calling my name, that sinking feeling must have started to creep in. She probably checked the usual spots. The kitchen, expecting to see me sipping my morning coffee. The bathroom, thinking I'd be standing in front of the mirror, half-shaven and running late. But I wasn't there. I wasn't anywhere. And then the little things started adding up. My boots gone. My jacket, the one I always grabbed on my way out, missing. The small dish by the door where I always tossed my keys, empty. That's when panic must have set in. I can almost picture her, standing in the middle of the living room, her heart pounding louder than the silence that stretched around her. She grabbed her phone, dialing my number. But there was no answer. Straight to voicemail. A few more calls. Same result. Nothing. Her next call was to my work. And that's when the real weight of it must have hit her. They told her I had quit, last week. In that moment, she knew. I hadn't just left. I had disappeared. Without a trace. But the final blow? That came when she rushed to the bank. She must have walked in, desperate, her mind racing with worst-case scenarios. But when she asked about our joint account, they gave her the news: the money was gone. Drained. By the time she figured it all out, there was hardly anything left. It was in that moment, standing there at the bank, that the truth came crashing down on her. I hadn't just left. I had erased myself from her life completely. I didn't know how long she searched for me. I didn't know the depths of her desperation or how far she went to try and track me down. But over time, I learned the details. She hired a private investigator. Spent money she probably couldn't afford, throwing everything she had into a search for someone who had already made sure there was nothing left to find. The harder she looked, the more she realized just how deeply I had planned my exit. Every move I made had been deliberate. Every step calculated. I had left no breadcrumbs, no loose ends. And as time dragged on, regret consumed her. She couldn't fix it. She couldn't explain it. She couldn't even beg for forgiveness. There was no opportunity for any of that. She had no one to blame but herself. And maybe that was the worst part. Knowing she could never make it right. Knowing that the door she had closed with her betrayal could never be reopened. While she was still searching, I was already somewhere else. Far away. I had found a place far from the chaos. Far from the country. Far from everything that had tied me to the past. A new life. A life where her shadow couldn't reach me. And as she drowned in her regret, I was already breathing free air. I settled on a quiet island in the Caribbean where no one knew my name and the world moved at a slower, more peaceful pace. Life there was different, simpler. The rhythm of the waves, the rustle of palm leaves in the breeze, and the soft hum of distant laughter became the background of my days. I found something there I hadn't even realized I was missing. Peace. At first, I lived alone, embracing the solitude. The silence, which had once felt suffocating, became a refuge. It gave me space to breathe, to think, to heal. But life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. Eventually, I met someone. She wasn't like the others. She was kind, gentle, understanding. And best of all, she respected me for who I was, scars and all. With her, I experienced what real love was supposed to feel like. Honest, simple, genuine. We built a life together, one rooted in trust and mutual respect. And when our daughter was born, I knew without a doubt that I had made the right decision. This was the family I had always dreamed of. The one I thought I had lost forever. The future I had once believed was beyond my reach. That old life? It was gone. For good. Years passed. My life in the Caribbean became everything my past life wasn't: peaceful, honest, and free from the crushing weight of betrayal. I had stopped looking over my shoulder. I had stopped thinking about her. That chapter was closed, locked away where it couldn't touch me anymore. But the past, it has a funny way of finding you when you least expect it. By then, I wasn't hiding. Not really. I had moved on. I was living a life I was proud of, a life that had nothing to do with her. Until the day she found me. I didn't see her first. She saw me. I learned later how it happened, how, after all those years, she finally managed to track me down. She flew halfway across the world to stand in front of me again. And when she did, I was just living my life. It was an ordinary day. I was standing near the market, holding my daughter's hand as she tugged at me excitedly, pointing at something she wanted. Her little giggle filled the air, a sound so pure that it made my heart feel full. And that's when she saw me. I can only imagine what went through her mind as she stood there, watching from a distance. This wasn't what she expected. Maybe she thought she'd find me broken, bitter, still haunted by what she had done to me. Maybe she thought I'd be living a half-life, stuck in the past, unable to move on. But what she saw was a man who had healed. A man who was whole. A man who had left the weight of her betrayal far behind him. She must have stood there for a while, just watching, processing what she was seeing. And then she stepped closer. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She was barely above a whisper when she finally spoke my name. A breath. A plea. A last, desperate attempt to reach something, anything, that still connected us. I tilted my head slightly, studying her the way you might study a stranger. Because that's exactly what she was now, a stranger. She searched my face, her eyes pleading, looking for recognition, for emotion, for something. But all she found was emptiness. I let the silence stretch between us, letting the weight of the truth settle in. And then, finally, I spoke. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" The words hit her harder than any scream ever could. Harder than accusations. Harder than confrontation. She blinked, and for the first time, I saw something in her eyes that I had never seen before. Defeat. I didn't wait for her to respond. I didn't give her a chance to explain, to cry, to beg. I simply turned around, took my daughter's hand, and walked away. And I never looked back. As I walked away, I felt nothing. Not anger. Not pain. Just peace. The kind of peace that comes when you finally realize that the past no longer has power over you. There was a time when I thought I would never heal. I thought her betrayal would haunt me forever. It had erased everything we had once shared, years of love, trust, and memories, undone by a single choice. But that was the past. A closed chapter. And I had no interest in reopening it. Some betrayals, they aren't meant to be forgiven. They're meant to be forgotten. Now, I want to hear from you. If you were in my position, what would you have done? Would you have confronted her? Walked away like I did? Or handled it differently? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Maybe, just maybe, they'll find the answer they've been looking for.